everyone. Welcome to today's session here at South by Southwest EDU 2019. For the first time ever, we're also really excited to introduce and to welcome our folks that are dialing in from live stream on EDU On Air. We're really excited to have everyone in the room here today and the folks that are able to dial in over Hangouts On Air as well. Today we have a K-12 education panelist. In the room with me, we have 5 amazing educators, IT directors and IT coaches who will explain exactly and discuss how they're using technology to transform their learning spaces. My name is Anita Flanagan. I'm a program manager with the G Suite for Education team. I've been at Google just over 11 years and a former educator, and excited today to just give you a little taste of what the panel is going to talk about. First, I'll go through a few updates on the most recent announcements that we've made on the Google for Education team. So before we get started, I just want to get a sense, who's using Chromebooks already in their schools and in their districts? Great. And what about G Suite for Education? All right, so we've got the right folks in the room. So today, when we talk about transforming our learning spaces, the one thing I want to get across is it means so many different things to different people. It really means, it depends on the students that are in the classroom. It depends on what you're trying to teach as well. And it depends on the 4 walls that you even have available to you. And we recognize that you can't always change the 4 walls, but you can very much change that learning space and that learning environment that you provide to your students in the classroom. And so today, some of the things that we'll talk about in this presentation are things like creating inclusive environments, transforming your space to open your space up to be more diverse and to meet the needs of your unique students. It might mean transforming your space to provide more collaborative, more creative opportunities in that classroom. It might mean updating your own teaching and learning practices. And finally, it might mean actually discovering apps and lessons that go beyond what we have available on G Suite for Education. And there's no doubt that technology is transforming learning and how we work. And a testament to that is Chromebooks is the #1 selling device in schools, both in the US, in Canada, in Sweden, and as far afield as New Zealand. We have over 80 million teachers and students using G Suite for Education every month. And we have over 40 million teachers and students using Google Classroom every month. And that's all thanks to you. It's thanks to the feedback that we get from you. It's thanks to the feature requests that we get from you to constantly keep us striving to create products that are meeting your unique needs in the classroom. So when we talk about, as I say, transforming our learning space, sometimes that does mean creating a more inclusive learning space. We're very proud of the fact that both on Chromebooks and on G Suite for Education, there's a lot of inbuilt applications and capability that really allow you to meet the diverse needs of the students that are in your classroom. In particular, we just launched the ability to provide closed captions when you're presenting your slides. So as you're presenting your slides, you can turn on this feature. The microphone in your laptop will pick up what you're saying and then actually present that out so that students who might be deaf, who might be hard of hearing, or students where English is a new language or a second language, they'll be able to follow along. I think the video is preventing me from moving forward. Perfect, thank you. And in some cases, transforming your learning space really means allowing your students to be more creative, providing more collaborative opportunities, more project-based learning opportunities in that learning space. And one of the applications and one of the tools that we're very excited and we see a lot of energy around at the moment is Jamboard. Jamboard, how many have heard of Jamboard in the room? A few, not too many. So Jamboard is available on 3 different platforms. We have a Jamboard kiosk, the hardware Jamboard over here, but it's also an app that you can install on your Chromebook. And if you have any sort of device, it's also a web application. So you can check out Jamboard on jamboard.google.com. And really the power of this is it provides a whiteboarding experience to all of your students. Your students can get together in teams. They can start brainstorming. It's a file just like any other Google Drive file. So it can really be a collaborative file that lives on through the length of or the life of a project that your students might be working on together. Another way that we see educators and students really transform their learning space is by expeditions and Tour Creator. How many people have used Tour Creator in the room since it launched? Okay, so Expeditions allows you to really expand the four walls of your classroom. You can bring your students on VR experiences that go far beyond what you can physically do within your classroom. You can go visit the Acropolis, you can bring them underwater. There are so many, there's over 1,000 expeditions tours that you can bring your students on now. With Tour Creator, that was the #1 feature request from our educators. They wanted educators and students to be able to create their own experiences, to really be creative and to provide an opportunity to allow students to be creative in a way that they just weren't beforehand. And today, we just announced that when you create tours, your students can now play them back on iOS, and that completes the full playback experience. So your students will now be able to play back those tours on the web, on Android, and also on iOS. In some cases, transforming your learning space is just about updating your teaching and learning practices. As I say, we have over 40 million teachers and students using Google Classroom today every month. And last fall, we announced the biggest overhaul and UI refresh of Google Classroom since we launched over 4 years ago. We heard from educators and from teachers that they wanted an easier way to organize and manage the stream of assignments and work that they assign to their students. And we launched this new classwork tab. And so we'd encourage you all to check that out. We also launched improved grading and feedback capabilities on Google Classroom. And just recently, we announced a gradebook beta on Google Classroom. So if you haven't heard about the Google Classroom gradebook, or you haven't signed up for the beta, we would encourage you all to take a look at that gradebook capability that's now available on Google Classroom. In some cases, transforming your teaching practices means that you want to have external folks actually be present in your learning, in your classroom experience. What we're hearing from some districts is that they want classes and schools across districts to be able to share resources, to be able to connect two classes together across the district. They want to be able to provide access to students who may not be able to be physically present in the room to be able to dial into a class. And in some cases, it means they want to just bring an expert from, whether it's a community expert, a museum expert, whatever type of expert that is, into the classroom. And Hangouts Meet provides that capability. We also now, with G Suite Enterprise for Education licenses, that allows you to record Hangouts Meet, and then actually they're saved on Drive, so you can share them through Google Classroom or through your LMS. And so that's a great feature that we're seeing more and more interest from educators. And lastly, sometimes in that transformed space, educators actually want to keep students more on task and more focused. And they actually want to be able to lock down the Chromebook that their students might be taking an assessment or taking a quiz on. So last fall, again, we announced the ability to lock a Chromebook down lock a quiz down on managed Chromebooks. And so this means that educators, teachers can toggle a switch. And when a student takes that quiz, the Chrome browser will go into a locked mode. And until the student has submitted the quiz, the Chrome browser will be locked, and the student will have to stay on task and have to stay focused on that particular quiz. Again, this is something that's in beta mode, so I'd encourage you all to go sign up for that beta if you haven't already, and if you do have managed Chromebooks in your school or in your district. And lastly, we recognize that there are just so many different ways to transform your learning space. And it might mean, different things for you and for your students depending on your needs and the diverse requirements of the students that are in front of you. And that could mean sharing and discovering apps and lessons that go beyond G Suite for Education. We're very excited that we just announced an acquisition of Workbench just a number of months ago. That's a platform that allows educators to build and share lessons and content. So that's something that's just joined the Google family, and we're really excited to see where that goes. We're also hearing from educators that they find it really hard to know what apps to use, and really kind of what's best practice when it comes to using third-party apps in the learning space. And we're hearing that it takes a really long time. It can often be a very painful process. So you're going to Twitter, you're going to various blogs, you're attending conferences like this, you're on Pinterest. And so we're really excited. Just today, just about an hour ago, if you go to the Google for Education blog, you'll notice that we announced the Chromebook App Hub. And this is going to be a space that both educators, and I'll just move on to the next slide, but educators can go and share ideas and share how they're using apps in their classroom. Developers can go here and actually share how their applications are being used in education, how their applications are meeting the accessibility, the data policy requirements that are that we know that are very unique across schools and across different districts. And so if you're interested, take a look at these links here. But that's going to be coming very soon, and we're really excited to bring that transparency and to bring all of that information into one place. So if you are using Chromebooks, you can actually go here to find applications that we know work well in schools and in learning environments. And lastly, as I said before, this whole space, we're going to invite you all to come back here tomorrow to take a tour of this space. We'll have a research lab, a creative lab, and an instruction lab. And you can literally roll up your sleeves and get a hands-on experience of this space tomorrow during a 45-minute demo. If you take the demo, you'll also get all the resources to bring that type of demo back to your classroom as well. So please do join us tomorrow if you can. And so without further ado, I want to invite up our panelists up to the stage and hear all of these unique, amazing educators have their own stories to tell about how they've been using our G Suite for Education tools, Chromebooks, to really transform their learning spaces. So we have 3 local Texans and a few folks that flew in all the way from Iowa and New Hampshire. So what we'll do is we'll go from left to right. We'll have Craig introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what you do at your school.
Great. My name is Craig Scheel. I am a tech integrator at a school in Bedford, New Hampshire, called Bedford High School. 16 years in education, 6 as a high school math teacher, and then made the transition to be a tech coach or a tech integrator, and supporting students and staff using tech in the high school. And we have been a Chromebook school now for 4 years, 1-to-1. I'm also a Google certified trainer.
Hi, my name is Lori Ebers. I'm an 8th year educator teaching both in Austin ISD and Round Rock ISD. I'm currently the 6th grade team lead at Cedar Valley Middle School. It's a middle school here out in the suburb of Austin in Round Rock ISD. I am a Google certified educator, and our campus is also a Google certified campus where all of our faculty and staff is Google certified. I'm also helping to create content for the Round Rock, it's called the ARC, which is the Align Round Rock curriculum, developing science content and resources for teachers within our district.
Hi. My name is Emily Bruns. I am here from Iowa, so even though it's cold here today, it's about 50 degrees warmer than when I left, so it's still an improvement. I teach high school social studies at Mason City High School in Mason City, Iowa. We have a high school population of about 1,000 students. This year, we rolled out a really comprehensive kind of instructional technology plan. We went 1-to-1 for the first time at the high school. We invested in Jamboards and VR goggles and kind of jumped in the deep end in terms of instructional technology. So hopefully I can provide some insight on what it looks like when you are rolling out all of this and trying to get community and teacher and admin support behind you.
My name is Jennifer Passy. I am 30 years into education this year, so I'm really proud of that. And am working at a school district called Leander Independent School District right outside. If you've ever been to the Oasis, if you're visiting, come out there and go get something to drink in a nice day. But my school district is rapidly growing, one of the fastest school districts in the state of Texas growing. And I am at a K-5 school called River Ridge Elementary. I am their instructional coach. So each school has an instructional coach at their school that helps provide resources to teachers and students. So I work in support with both of them and also with the technology integration. So that's why I'm here today.
My name is Roland Rios. I thought I was going to be the most experienced educator. I've only been in education 29 years, so I'm not even close to you. I'm the Director of Technology for the Fort Sam Houston School District in San Antonio. We're a public school district completely on a military installation. So we're a small district of about 1,600 students. In addition to being the tech director there, I proudly serve as the president of the Texas Computer Educators Association, TCEA, here in Texas. And I am a brand new grandpa.
So I have some questions prepared today, but how we'd like to run this is if you have any questions that spring to mind that crop up as we're going through the panel, please do raise your hand and we have some mics that we can roam around. If you're listening in and watching in from the live stream, please do post your questions in the chat room as well, and we have some of our Google folks here who will ask the question on your behalf. But otherwise, according to the theme today and transforming a learning space, again, we'll kind of go from left to right on this question. Craig, what comes to mind when you think of best practice when it comes to sort of a transformed learning space?
I think it's important that students have flexibility in terms of how they are able to produce and demonstrate competency, not always saying everybody needs to do the same thing and get a recipe of 30 of the same items. Collaboration, I think, is a very, very important. I think it's important when we open the walls up and we're not just doing things for the teacher, that we're creating things for a broader audience, and that students own their own learning. I think that's so important. And I look back at when I was a student myself and I just did something because I was told to memorize, and I wasn't owning my own learning. And so I think that's very big.
Great, and we'll go left to right. Yeah, Laura, if you want to.
When I think of a best-in-class learning space, I think of a space where we are fostering lifelong learners, that we're allowing our kids to have an opportunity to decide what their questions are, how they're going to answer their questions, and to collaborate and brainstorm together. Lifelong learning is so that they are able to also know how to and have that courage to extend their learning in their adult life and to have those skills. Also, I feel like it's so important for in a best-in-class learning space for students to have their own learning that is personal and memorable to them.
I think a best learning space for me would be a learning space that's engaging. I think traditionally in schools, it's a very sit and get model, and I think as educators, we're moving away from that. That's kind of the trend in education, but through some of these technology tools, we're allowing students to engage with the content in a way that's firsthand, VR goggles, Jamboards, things like that. They allow students to engage with the content collaboratively and provide flexibility. And when students are engaged in the content, they remember the content and they become interested in the content beyond that lesson. And so I think the more we can engage students, the better we will do some of those things with creating lifelong learners and all of that good stuff.
We start our day at River Ridge by saying dream big, and we believe big, we reach big, we think big, and we believe it will actually occur. And so that's how we start our day off in the morning. And so we are encouraging students all the time to be able to think differently during the day of what they're learning. And I think transforming that space, just like they're all saying, we have a great design in our school. And so we're designed into neighborhoods with lots of collaborative spacing where there's access to technology in their hands easily. We aren't one-to-one yet in the 3 through 5, but we're looking at that for next year. But we do have a great PTA who's supported us and given us lots of devices to be able to access information quickly. We also believe that our learning spaces can look different. We have a huge, big school garden where we utilize that in our playgrounds become part of our curriculum because of the, talking about gravity and talking about motion and things like that. So it's looking beyond just those standards and how those standards look on a piece of paper and how we can really put them in action so that kids can really be able to experience that. One of the best things that we've recently done is have an innovation lab where kids are able to come into that innovation lab and really think and go beyond what they've learned in the classroom.
Boy, it's hard to go last. When I think of the best learning space, I think of one that's not confined by space. And I think Google tools, and we've mentioned it already, things like Google Meet, Google Tour Creator. I tell my teachers they have no excuse for keeping the kids inside the classroom. If not physically, then at least electronically, getting them out there, connecting them with other districts, other students, taking them out into the world. I mentioned we're on a military installation. At any given time, about a third of our students have a parent that's deployed. I mean, imagine you're a mom or dad, and you're not going to see your son for a year. You're not going to physically. You're going to miss a whole year of their education. That's sad. So in our district, we allow our students to share outside of our domain, and that keeps mom and dad in that loop, and they're able to help with homework and assignments. And so that idea that there is no space because of that technology affords us that opportunity.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. Emily, I want to go back to a point you made at the start, just around you just invested heavily in Mason City on new technologies, going one-to-one with Chromebooks, on VR and on Jamboards. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about what instigated that change and how your sort of learning spaces have changed over the last year since you've rolled out all this new technology?
I would say in our district, I might ruffle some feathers at the lower levels, but I think our high school is the last to get any sort of new technology, or we have been in the past. Lower level buildings had smart boards, they had one-to-one Chromebooks and things like that, but our high school did not. And so this past spring or fall, so about a year ago, we passed an instructional support levy at the community level. And without that, we definitely would not have been able to invest in the technology that we currently have. So I think step one for us was getting the community support behind it. And I think the challenge of our district is we have about a 50% free and reduced lunch rate. So we don't have a ton of monetary support from the PTA. We don't have an excess of funding from the state level as most schools, they also have those same challenges. And so we went to the community and said, without this, we can't best educate your kids. We need support from you. And our community got behind us, and they passed 2 instructional support levies, which allowed us to invest in both infrastructure and technology. It was targeted levies for those. And so then this past summer, we have a high school technology coach, Cassie Dre, who basically looked at saying, we now have this money and we want to be innovative. We don't want to be behind the curve. We want to kind of be ahead of something. And so she looked at Jamboards and invested, contacted Google and said, we want to be a part of this. And we now have Jamboards at the high school and the junior high. We have virtual reality goggle setups, I guess like a cart of those at both buildings. And I think she has been a person in our district that has really driven the change. And with kind of her, you also have an admin team, both at the district and school levels, and teachers that have all gotten on board and said, we want to do this. And so I think it's been not just a teacher-driven or an admin-driven change, it's been in the school district, but also the community as a whole.
That's amazing. And going from a school that's just invested in this technology to Craig, your school, which has been a one-to-one district for 4 years, can you kind of talk to us about what does that look like in a school that has invested in this in such a long time, and kind of talk to us about what does your learning space look like? How does that differ to schools that haven't been able to invest in the way your school has?
I think the big aha moment when we first did this 4 years ago was going from real-time learning to learning when tech was available. So prior to being one-to-one, we had, I think, 5 or 6 carts. Like, I've tried to erase this in my memory. And, it's those carts that the whole school of 1,500 students have access to, and the teachers have to sign it out. But wait, you need to know 3 weeks in advance that you want to sign out that cart because you think you're going to do that activity then. it was just a nightmare of a situation. And, oh, wait, we can't do that thing. It would be great if we could do it today, but we can't because, oh, wouldn't you know, it's only available 3 of the 5 blocks that I need. So the teacher just wipes that out, and we'll just forget that, and we'll just move on, right? So such a big culture shift happened that now learning happens real time. If there's a discussion, and all of a sudden, based on what the students are asking, a teacher might say, go look that up and let us know what you find, right? You couldn't do that if you didn't have the card available. And so that was a big shift for us. Very, very important. And I think we wouldn't, so obviously there's a lot of collaboration happening. There's a lot of ease in communicating with teacher to student, with Google Classroom, right? Whether it's tasks or assignments or to-do lists. But I also go into, I think we strive to make sure that we didn't just throw tech in the hands of students and teachers, and there was a thoughtful process put into place. We started only with 2 grades and then added a 3rd and added a 4th. We wanted to make sure the bandwidth would be able to handle, right, all these. Now we're talking almost 2,000 devices, right, on one network. We also direction with administration and making sure that teachers feel supported. I think someone else had mentioned there's a tech coach maybe at each building. We have 6 buildings in our district, and there's one of us at each of the buildings. And at the high school, we teach a 4x4 block. So 8 blocks, teachers teach 5, 6 is their prep, 7 is their personal planning, and wouldn't you know, block 8 is your planning with your team. So every other day, 76 minutes is devoted to let's talk. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Oh, you can do this. I'll do this. Oh, I don't know how to do that with Google Forms. Oh, don't worry. I'll create it. I'll share it. So we're all collaboratively working together. And if that didn't exist, we wouldn't be where we are right now. So it's that supporting one another, making sure that tech is being utilized meaningfully, not because it's there.
Yeah, that's great. Laurie, I wanted to talk to you about, and I think all of the, when we were discussing this panel before we joined today, I think many of you sort of brought up, well, we should really talk about the challenges and you know, the worries, the concerns that educators often have when we want to start introducing more and more technology into the classroom, when we want to try to transform, you know, some of these learning spaces. Can you sort of talk to us kind of what are some of the typical challenges that teachers are worried about, the blockers that crop up, and how you tend to try to overcome those with the educators that you work with?
Yes, I feel like sometimes educators can feel a little apprehensive to adapting new technology because maybe they feel like they need to be an expert before they deliver that technology to their classroom. But in all reality, you're not going to become an expert until you actually do and learn from the product. And I feel like instead of knowing the product 110% before you deliver it to your kids, why not just learn the basics and learn the product and become an expert with them and learn the product together with the children in the classroom. You know, we, as educators, we want our students to be innovative. So we also have to think that if we want innovative students, then our teachers also need to be innovative educators, right? So it's okay to take that healthy risk and to learn something new and to learn it with the kids. Really embrace the excitement that you see in the classroom when they're using this new technology, but also embrace the organized chaos that you have as we all learn the product together. That's great.
Roland, I wanted to talk to you a little about, we just announced the Chromebook, the App Hub. I see you pumping the air. Can you tell us a little bit about why you think that's going to be really useful for schools and for districts?
Yeah, I was blessed to be on the customer advisory board, so kind of got a sneak peek at the Google App Hub. Right now, when we go to look for third-party applications, and I'm looking at the people right in front of me, and there's stickers on their computersforcode.org, and it's got Pear Deck and Flipgrid. And we use these third-party apps, and it's so hard for teachers and IT administrators to go out and find those that really work well. We can go out to the web store now, but I equate that, it's like trying to take a sip of water out of a fire hydrant. There's just so much coming at you. What the App Hub is going to do is going to be an online resource for teachers, for educators, for IT, for instructional coaches and developers to put everything in one portal. And for there to be peer reviews, for there to be lesson idea sparks, for developers to post what their policies are on student privacy and data and that sort of thing, and it kind of be a streamlined way of us getting quality apps into the hands of teachers and students. There's one thing that teachers never can have enough of, and that's time. And we all know how much time it takes us to vet these apps. So I'm so excited to have a dedicated app hub to help alleviate a lot of those pressures for us.
Yeah, that's great. I see lots of head nods as well in the room. That's great.
It's going to be really cool.
That's great to hear. Jennifer, as our elementary representative, I was really excited that we actually were able to have someone from all the different levels join us today on the panel. Can you sort of talk to us, about, I guess when we often think about innovation and transformed learning spaces, we think about the higher ages, the higher, even higher education, high school and middle school. We don't necessarily always think about what's really truly possible and capable at the elementary level. Can you sort of talk to us about what, I know you've mentioned the innovation lab in your school and even the gardens that you're using. Kind of what do they look like, and what are the types of skills that you can really enable in your students at the elementary level?
Well, first of all, we just meet them where they are. As kindergartners, when they come in, they're tech savvy very fast. They have already had those experiences in their stroller with their mom's iPad or their mom's phone, and so they can actually navigate an iPad really quickly. And so, but it's also beginning to teach them those tech skills that are how to keep you safe, and also how to find the right big mix of schooling the traditional way, kind of, and then also a little bit more innovative. And so that's where we are really consciously talking during our PLC time, that just like Craig said, where teachers are meeting together to talk about how can this integration look, and what does it look like, and how can we scaffold it up, and what environments do we need to give them to be able to scaffold it up, and how quickly do we want to integrate it into their day. So kindergarten starts pretty quickly. Honestly, it's a center right away, and the district provides lots of opportunities for us to monitor and collect data on kids. And so we are definitely having to make sure that the data is correct, because the kids know how to use the technology correctly. And so giving them opportunities to be able to do that, and then also to be able to practice at home. The communication between the parent who's dropping off their first-time kindergartner or first grader to your school, and that trust in the education system is huge. And then being able to have digital learning going on all over the place in our school too, where they're using smart boards, or they're using digital signage when the parents are dropping off. Things like that helps promote that digital society that's going on in our school. And then being able to just kind of ease them in gradually. We have first graders on Google Classroom. And so how are we scaffolding our Google Classroom so that as they get into 6th grade, they're self-driven. They know how to operate the system. They know where it is. And we're also needing to make sure that when they launch new things like you guys do, I'm like, oh gosh, I've got to go back and really talk to my teachers about the new things that are happening in Google Classroom. Google Expeditions, we're really looking at that. I wrote a grant for that, and so we have the Google Cardboards in our innovation lab, and inviting teachers to come in and be able to use that experience, and then actually teaching our students to be able to guide the lessons. So our teachers take a back seat, get their goggles on, and a student is actually guiding them because of the questions there. And then the students now taking it to different levels where they're able to write the question after they've viewed the expedition. So yes, Google's provided us this scaffolded questioning, but our kids are writing questions that they feel are really going to meet the needs of the learning that happens during that expedition, which has been fun to see that happen, that transformation of taking the learning that we have and then making it their own. And then being able to have the opportunity for them to have a space to be able to collaborate with other kids in other grade levels, and giving them that flex time has been important. Being able to also make sure the Wi-Fi outside of the building works, like when they're in the garden, can that work? Can they get the iPad to work outside on the to be able to collect the data from the garden, whether it be the temperature or things that they're using with other kinds of technology, things we use with Globy discs. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but then tracking the data back on a Chromebook or whatever to be able to collect that data. So those are kinds of ways that we're beginning to do it. I would say that it's important to have that scaffolding for them so that then we know on third grade that we really want our kids to leave with this ability to do it. So our fourth grade teachers don't have to reteach that. They are ready to go. And that's the communication that Craig was really talking about.
That's great. And before I keep going with some of my questions here, I do want to make sure that we're opening up the questions to everyone in the floor here today, and also on the live stream. So are there any questions okay, we have one here straight away. That's great. And we have a mic.
We struggle some with promoting the way that we use technology in schools. Parents see it as more screen time, and are sometimes resistant to that. So we're constantly battling that understanding with parents of actually that we're using it for creating, not for consumption. How do any of you have a great idea of how you promote technology with parents?
My first gut reaction was just what you said. Make sure they understand you're using it to create and not just consume. And it goes back, Craig said it earlier, and it's giving those kids that authentic audience and making sure that they're pushing stuff out there. One of the biggest kickbacks I got from our teachers when we went to Chromebooks, and I'm sure everyone's heard this, how are they going to print? And I just like bashing my head again. And I finally said, why are they printing? Why aren't we publishing? Why aren't we producing? Why aren't, there's a saying that I heard from somebody, it's not mine, that said if a student thinks the world is going to see their work, they're going to make it good. And if they think only their teacher is going to see it, they're going to make it good enough. We need to put, and I think once parents start to see that more and more, wow, look at what my kid produced. Look what they published online, and look at the group work that was involved. They will slowly start to buy into the fact that you're not sitting behind a screen and they're not sitting there passively.
I think like my principal does coffee talks where they're inviting, and then also we are sending out Google slide presentations that kids are making, and so they're able to see the product, and asking them to come in has been great, because once they see the scaffoldedness of the student and how they're learning this in kinder or this in third, and then even what they're going to need in sixth grade, and they're able to do that already. I mean, the parents have big time buy-in, but we also, you have to talk with the teachers as well of how are you communicating that through your weekly update. Are you being technology forward on are you sending a piece of paper that's got all your, the things. So if you're promoting it that way, then it transforms differently, So I think that's the biggest thing, is having your teachers kind of communicate that way, and then a s'more, or this is coming out, it looks a lot better.
And Craig, I'd almost open up that question to you as well. I know in your school you use a lot of third-party apps to ensure that your students are being creative. Can you sort of talk a little bit about what types of apps you're using and the types of content that your students are producing as well on their Chromebooks?
Yeah, the state of New Hampshire currently has pushed this big student privacy, so there is an actual formal process. So I'm really interested to hear this new app hub. But basically, parents are given a list at the beginning of the year saying these are the tools that, so tools outside of Google, that we plan on using with our students. And so parents are able to see the privacy statement. They're able to see and click on the links to all the tools that are available, and it's basically a sign-off process. But yeah, I mean, now that we're 4 years in, we are trying to take it to the next level, right? So it's not just writing papers, it's not just creating a Google slide presentation, right? It's let's podcast, all right? Let's let's actually like Soundtrap is one of those tools, or like WeVideo for the video creation side. So we are trying to take it to that next level and look at those tools, because as we all know, we shouldn't all be doing everything in one platform, right? Like, we should be branching outside of Google Slide presentation, because that's also where a lot of creativity comes into place. Not everyone should be turning in, I think I'd mentioned this earlier, 30 of the same thing, right? That's not a student owning their learning. But if I'm given a choice and the flexibility, hey, I can actually do a wrap, and I'm gonna do it this way, and I'm gonna use this tool, great. But there is a formal process that we've gone through, and it is all online. If you just search Bedford School District from New Hampshire, you can see what the parents see off of the district homepage there.
That's great. Any other questions from the floor? Yeah.
So, wall real estate is at a premium in most classrooms, and of those that have Jamboards, can you speak to your decision-making process that led to that specific purchase?
I can kind of speak to that. I was not on the purchasing committee, but the benefit of having Jamboards, at least in our classrooms, is that Jamboards are on wheeled carts. So they are not attached to a wall. They are not stationary. I don't have a lot of excess space in my room, so I tend to keep it in one spot, but we've done it where, we may have students creating content on Jamboards, but I'm not using mine that day, so I wheel it down to another classroom and we put multiple Jamboards in the same room. So with mine, like, it covers up area of the wall because you have to put it somewhere in the room, but it's not a fixed spot, so we can move it back and forth as much as we need to. So I think that's been a huge benefit, and a benefit compared to like smart boards that we had in our other buildings, that they were in a fixed spot, from the point we got them until, now.
Could you talk, even just with that Jamboard, just the sort of things that really have changed since you've invested in your Jamboards, the types of creative projects, the student involvement that's really changed since you've brought Jamboard into your technology space at your school?
I think personally, when I heard that we were getting them, we got an email like in August saying, hey, we're getting these cool devices. And I think a key point for our district is that we did not invest in them for every single teacher. It was kind of a challenge by choice. So Cassie Dre, our tech integrationist or our tech coach, she sent an email out and said, hey, we're going to have, I think, 18 or 20 of these. Who would like one? Who wants to be challenged by this? And I originally was like, no, like, I don't like the smart boards that I've seen in elementary schools. I don't want one. Like, I thought it was a glorified smart board. And so I didn't reply to the email. And then I was working in the building before school started, and she was there unpacking all of the boxes. And she came and found me. She's like, you need one of these. Like, come check it out. And I played with it for the next, 3 hours. I think for me, originally, I used it as a whiteboard. In my classes, I'm a big board note writer. I don't use slideshows really. I write my own notes out. And so I started doing that. So it was still kind of a traditional teaching model, but as you become more comfortable with it, and especially as the app was rolled out on Chromebooks and the web-based program became more kind of user-friendly for students, it's now collaborative, where I've done, if I do have a slideshow of notes, I have students put sticky notes with main points on the slide on the Jamboard, so I'm kind of using 2 platforms at once. I've had students create projects where I would traditionally maybe do a Google Slides or a poster, things like that. They can use Jamboards. One of the things I love about the Jamboards, and I encourage you to check it out tomorrow, is that you can move things around. So I recently did a project. I teach AP Human Geography, and we did a project on the Columbian Exchange, which is the exchange of livestock and plants from the New World to the Old World, and they have to create a menu demonstrating that there are plants that existed in the Old World that did not exist in the New World, and vice versa. So I've usually just had them do it on paper, but this year they did it on Jamboards, and it was really cool. I had kids put a plate on the Jamboard, and then they'd take images of food and put it on the plate from different parts of the world and things like that. And so it's been kind of a slow process, but you end up with interactive products that not only the students presenting can do, but also people can add things in the audience, because I can have students with their Chromebooks up that are simultaneously creating things with the Jam. And so It's been a learning curve for both me and the students. I definitely still have students that are like, all right, you're making me do this on a Jamboard. I'm going to do 3 bullet points with pictures next to it. And they basically create a Google slide presentation on a different platform. But we're seeing a definite shift into students kind of becoming more open to what the product has to offer.
That's great to hear. Before, or do you want to answer?
Can I just add? So our district was, I was very fortunate to receive a grant that had been announced of Jamboards, and so I was able to receive 2 at the high school. And what's been really interesting for me is trying to push the envelope on collaboration. And go beyond cooperation, right? So when we say, oh, we're all collaborating on a Google slide deck, what does that end up becoming? You have slide 1, you have slide 2, you have slide 3, and then what do you know? We have this product that we all put together and now we're going to present. Was that true collaboration? Or was it just cooperation we just put together and now we submit it, right? So with Jamboard, we're really pushing the envelope a little bit. I'm trying to. With the staff that I work with. And there's also something with writing things down, right? We tend to learn more if we write it down. And so with the Jamboard, you're able to, if you were all in our group and we had our Jamboard right here, right? There are 2 people at the board writing things down and jotting notes, and it's students actually talking to each other. We've actually used the Jamboard without Chromebooks to force kids to talk to one another so that together they're actually collaborating instead of I'm in my own zone and I'm doing my own thing. So we're trying to push the envelope and do something a little different. And I will say it's been kind of fun. And we've used it for our computer science. Students are having to come up and create a drawing with coding, and so they modeled what the business does, right? Business world, you're gonna do this role. Together they talk about what they wanna do. They draw the image. Okay, we think it's gonna look like this. All right, who are the coders? All right, who's gonna code what? And then they finally have a product that they can showcase using the Jamboard. So definitely something to take a look at. And for those of you who are here, I would also encourage to check it out.
Great, yeah, and tomorrow please come back and you'll be able to check out. There's 3 Jamboards in this space, so you'll definitely have time to get some hands-on experience. I know you had a question.
So with K-12, all of our students are virtual, but I hear you all talk about the brick and mortar setting. Do y'all use any virtual components with Google for those students who are not physically in the classroom?
We have several instances. We have one separate campus for some of our special needs kids with emotional issues. They can't physically be in the classroom. And while it's only a block away, they do join their science or English class daily. We just set up a Chromebook in the front of the teacher, and she starts a Google Meet with them. It's a recurring event in the Google Calendar with that student. And he can sit and ask questions, and it's like he's sitting right there in class with us. So we do.
We use Google Meet also with other schools. So instead of kind of honestly just listening to a classroom in another part of our district and then being able to listen to that teacher teaching something and then our teacher teaching something and then being able to have that dialogue afterwards. So we just present it really big on the whiteboard or whatever so that then the students can see the other classrooms and then be able to also ask questions. And then there's usually a Google sheet that we're using that we're all collaborating in, so then questions could be asked like virtually, like right here. So that's kind of how we use it. Typically, sometimes we will send things to other people, like in a different state or in a different place, and be able to interact that way via email or whatever to be able to do that, but it's not necessarily always virtually where you're able to check it out.
It sounds like we have a question in from the live stream as well.
Yes. From Wendy Marshall. For those who are using Chromebooks, how do you address the issue of accountability in your district in terms of damages to student devices that occur in your classroom? And do you have device repairs in-house, or how do you handle that?
I always tell people, if you're worried about Chromebooks getting damaged, don't worry. They're going to get damaged. Okay, you don't have to worry about it. It's going to happen. We buy our Chromebooks with a 3-year extended warranty and 3-year accidental damage If the student damages it, they have to pay a $30 handling fee. If you don't charge them something, if you don't hold them accountable, and they don't get the Chromebook back until I get my $30. We know it's going to happen. We account for that. But it is not a barrier in any way, shape, or form to being successful with Chromebooks one-to-one.
I think when we rolled out our one-to-one program, teachers and parents and everybody in the community was like, you're giving students these brand new devices that we just bought for them. How are you going to guarantee that we get them back, at the end of the year? And so we had students and parents sign a contract if they were getting a school Chromebook. And I think in that contract there are different levels. Like if you have it damaged the first time and you have to turn it in, I think we're fixing them in-house, but that's kind of a tech director question. But if you break it once, you pay this much. If you break it again, you pay this much. And I think eventually, if you have a repeat offender, they could lose their access to their take-home Chromebook, because we also have a cart of Chromebooks that students come in and check out every day. So we did have parents that said, I don't want my student transporting this Chromebook, and so they just check their Chromebook out at the beginning of the day. And then we have students that they only get it if they need it for a specific class. So we kind of gave some parents agency with that, but also made sure everyone knew these are valuable devices that, and it's a privilege to have them.
Yep. We'll just bring for the live stream folks. Yeah.
Just on what you had just said, what do you do if a parent does not want to sign the contract and does not want the responsibility? Because we went through that same thing, and it made it very difficult for our teachers when we're trying to go into a blended learning type of model, when they want to send something home or for them to do something after school hours. How do you guys tackle that?
It's definitely a challenge. I would say, 99% of the students in our building have their Chromebooks that they can take home, but we have a facility in our town called Four Oaks, and it's a kind of a facility for students or teenagers who may have had legal issues or may have basically need a placement. It's a live-in placement, but then we educate them at the high school. And so they are not allowed to take Chromebooks home, and we do have some students that, due to misuse of Chromebooks or just parents saying we don't want our student to have one, we have a couple of students that just can't have access to a Chromebook. And I don't know if we have a great solution for it, but we just communicate that with teachers and we print off copies of things. And but I think we've also put an effort to say, is there an alternative? We have kind of a monitoring program that we use to monitor Chromebook usage, and I can do that from my teacher desk. So we've been communicating, can I have your student go get a Chromebook, use it in my class, knowing that they'll be monitored the entire time, and I can lock down what websites they're going to or things like that. So it's definitely a learning curve, and as a teacher, it's definitely a big frustration when I have 30 students in my room that are on Chromebooks, and then I have to figure out how to get the material to one student who's not on it. So I don't have a great answer, but that's what we do.
And we have a handful, very small number. The parents don't want them to have the Chromebook. They're not against the technology. They don't trust their own kid. We have out-of-circulation Chromebooks that aren't under warranty. They're old, but they're still working just fine. So we put 2 or 3 in every classroom as backups for those kids.
So, the parents are concerned the parents are concerned about the little ones having access to that because, they may not be as careful as some older students.
I have a quick funny story. I had a kid last year, broke his Chromebook screen 3 times in 1 year. And I thought, oh my God, what is wrong with this kid? I didn't know him from Adam. So I went to the middle school. I said, I need to talk to Vincent Iwachukwu. Vincent turned the corner, 8th grader. The kid is 6'10" as an 8th grader. And I realized when Vincent drops his Chromebook, it falls a long way. So I never bothered him again. Plus, we're in the state playoffs for basketball this year. So.
We have a question down here.
I'm curious if any of you made the transition from, dare I say, Apple or Windows products to Google, and what was that transition like? Did you have any obstacles, either from an academic perspective or from an IT admin perspective? If people are already using Windows, why should we transition to Google? What obstacles did you face, and how did you resolve those?
I can talk a teeny bit about it. We have both devices, and so in our district, I kind of believe that you need to be able to have access in different ways to different things, and so it typically big time changes. I would say at 2nd grade, where it just goes to Chromebooks because we're going to the middle school where they're going to be given Chromebooks, and it's 1-to-1 from 6th grade all the way on. And now it's looking at being 3rd grade on, and so that's going to be a big difference for our 2nd graders too, because then we're going to have to make sure that. But I think that when you already have a computer lab that was set up with Apple, you don't just throw it away. You know what I mean? You're going to utilize it, or the iPads that came into our school at that point in time. But it's great to be able to have mixed, because they're going to go out into the world and have mixed. I would say that we tend to like the Chrome because we are Google, school district. So it's like we are constantly, everything is accessible that way. So I don't know any other way to kind of explain it. We've got to get them used to that, because they're going to have it the rest of the time. But also, many of the kids have iPhones, and I mean, not necessarily in elementary, but they've got to be able to figure it out. And I think that honestly, Google and Apple really do figure it out together too.
That's something I appreciate about Google, is that they are mindful of their products and being able to use their products on other brand devices. Like, for example, whenever I'm using AR, VR with the Google Expeditions, I can not just use the Chromebooks, but my kids can also pull out their smart devices, whether that's an iOS or an Android, and they can use the Expedition. They can also use their iPad. So I think Google is very mindful with making sure that the products that they create can be used all across.
We also live in Austin, so we've got all different kinds of stuff here. So and their parents all work for different places, so that's another thing that we have to think about too.
I was just going to mention that we had Macs before we went to Chromebooks at the high school, and we still have Macs in our labs, right? So when you're doing Photoshop and when you're doing video creations, there's still a need to have other devices, but we are already a Google school. We were already using the Google tools before we went into the Chromebook world. So there was no issue, if you would, with that. And I will say probably the ones that tend to take a little longer are those in like the math and sciences, right? Because there's things that they produce are a little more complicated than if you're in a humanities and you just have a quick document that you're sharing out with students, right? So I don't feel as though it's necessarily this big hurdle. It most certainly can be done.
I think we have time for just one last question, if anyone has a question in the room. Yeah? Oh, sorry.
So I'm in a district in the Appalachian Mountains, and it's quite poor. How do you deal with internet access at home? We're really struggling with that. When I was in an urban environment, we could send them to the public library or there were resources, but I mean, this is a place where my cell phone doesn't even always work when I'm driving around. How do you deal with internet access at home, or the lack of?
I can speak to that. We are in north central Iowa, and Iowa as a whole, we don't have good broadband access. My mom, she does not live near my district. She lives about an hour away, but she can't get Wi-Fi. Like, there is no broadband access there. And so that's a concern with rolling out all this technology to our students. And it's not something we have completely overcome, but we also have known that not all of our students can go home and access a document. And so the nice thing about the Chromebooks that we have for one-to-one students is, first and foremost, they don't have to be connected to the internet to like add to a document or things like that. So I tell students, like, as long as you added the document, the next time you're able to connect, it will save everything that you've added to it. So that's been a benefit. But we also mindfully, like, we have Mohawk Pride Time. Our mascot is a Mohawk, and so in the middle of the day, we have 25 minutes that is kind of like a structured study hall or a home room. And so, like, I tell students that if you don't have the ability to finish this at home, like, use your Pride Time, use that time, or use your study hall. And I think part of it is coaching students. And I tell students, like, firsthand that I'm a fourth-year teacher, so I didn't graduate high school that long ago, and I said when I was in high school, we had dial-up internet at home, even though no one else did. And so teachers would assign, like, me to watch a video on YouTube, and I'm like, well, this is going to take me 5 hours of my life to watch this video. And so I kind of speak from firsthand experience, and I tell students, like, come before schools, try and stay after. Like, granted, some of the same students that don't have access to internet are also the bus riders, but I have to kind of coach students and say, you need to use as much in-school time as you possibly can to get stuff done. And so coaching students through that is a big kind of hurdle, but it's also something that our district has kept in mind.
That's great. I'm conscious of time, and we have another higher ed session starting. So I just want to say a final thank you to everyone, all the panelists who came, to all of you for all your questions. This session is recorded, so if you missed anything, if there was any slides that you missed a URL, you'll be able to go back and find both the presentation and all the answers. So thank you again so much. I really appreciate you all attending today.